I'd like to welcome you all back this morning. We're going to go through a little bit of introduction and thank yous and talk about some things about the day, and then introduce this, go through the program, talk about some things before we get through, and then we will have the keynote presentation this morning. So, starting with some thank yous. And I did this last night, and we're going to see how fast I can do it this morning. We did it at Ananda timed me last night to see how fast I could do this, and we're not going to do it in the timely fashion as I did it last night. I'm not sure I can do it that fast, but we'll see. Okay. As I do this, would you please stand? I'm going to thank the statewide planning committee. So, from Butler Community College, that would be Susan Bradley and Jeff Timoney. Please stand. Thank you, Susan. And from Emporia State, we have Marla Darby and Lucy Usey and Dawn Mose and Caleb, who is not in the room. And then we also have many different people who are here from Emporia State who've been helping out today. And I want to say thank you to everybody from Emporia State, so thank you. From Fort Hays State, we have Catherine McGonigal. Woohoo! From Kansas Council of Instructional Administrators, we have Sarah Harris. Woohoo! She did a great job. From K-State, we have Brandon Clark, Myra Gordon, Madai Rivera, and Michelle White-Godinay, and we have them over here. Thank you. From Johnson County Community College is Star Triscornia. Thank you. From Pittsburgh State University, we have Ananda Jaywardhana and Deetra Rose over here. Woohoo! From the University of Kansas, we have Nathan Thomas. Yeah. KU Med Center, Lisa Van Hoos and Mike Worley. All righty, over here. And from Washburn University, Miguel Gonzalez-Abellas and Brad Turnbull. Yippee, woo! And the last is Wichita State University. We have Jean Griffin and Alicia Sanchez here in the middle. Thank you for all of your work this year. We greatly appreciate all of your work, coming and working hard. Okay. And so next, we want to say thank you to the Kansas Board of Regents for all of their support and their efforts. And we have Fred Logan here, and who will be speaking in just a few minutes, who represents the Board of Regents. We want to say thank you to Emporia State. We have several people here doing that. David Cordell's here, and we have President Michael Schonrock here, and a few deans are in the room, so we want to say thank you to everybody here. We also want to say thank you to the system-wide and chief academic officers. Let's see if I can get it right. No, I'm not going to get it right. Council of Chief Academic Officers, thank you very much. The Jones Institute of Educational Excellence, and if you read the program, you'll also get that the thank yous also include the ESU Teachers College and the ESU College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And when you go out in the front, I wanted to quickly give you a brief little statement. Our speaker is a past president of the National Association of Multicultural Education. We have a representative in our midst of the Kansas National Association of Multicultural Education, Dr. Sin Yen Yang, and she has put out information in the foyer for you to get about the Kansas National Association of Multicultural Education, and she'd like you to gather that information and hopefully join name. So if you have any questions, could you, Dr. Nam, and she's way in the back over here. Woohoo! Okay, so I have a couple more announcements before I turn it over to the next person. One, please mute your cell phone right now. Everybody take out your cell phone and put it on mute. Or silent. You know that word? Silent, mute, put it on silent. The next one, if, Caleb, can you run a little bit faster in here? Caleb, my student worker, my assistant here, is tweeting the event, and our tag is @KS Regents, and if you would like to join him in tweeting, we would like you to do that. @KS Regents is part of that option, and then the other is #Tilford14. If you use #Tilford by itself, that refers to a murder event, and we don't want you to use #Tilford. Use the 14, please. On your program, it also says that you can download today's presentation materials, and it gives you the address for that. If you want to do that today, those information will be also available later this week. But you can do that if you are in a rush and would like to have that today. So, I will be the MC, and so I will be making further announcements in between. But the next announcement is that I'm turning this over to Dr. David Cordell.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is a great day to be on the Emporia State University campus, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to ESU for the 2014 Michael Tilford Conference on Diversity and Multiculturalism. My name is David Cordell, and I'm privileged to serve as provost here at ESU. I think probably everyone here this morning knows that there is a tremendous need for our Kansas colleges and universities to educate increasingly diverse student populations. And we've known for a very long time just how important it is to make sure that we prepare all of our students for successful lives in a much more diverse world. But there is, I think, a greater urgency to this today than even a year ago when this conference met at ESU. Our Kansas higher education system has a strategic plan. It's called Foresight 2020. You're probably familiar with it. And one of that plan's aspirations is for 60% of eligible Kansans to have a higher education credential by the year 2020. So, who are the students who will get us to 60%? Well, I want you to consider this. 20 years ago, 17% of the students in our local Emporia school district identified as members of ethnic minorities. 17%. Now today, that percentage is not 17%, it is 56%. So it's pretty clear, I think, that this conference and the ideals that it represents are very important. They're important to the state of Kansas and its people, and they're also extremely important for our colleges and universities. So I just want to thank you for participating in this year's Michael Tilford Conference, and I also want to thank you for your commitment to those ideals. I hope that you're going to find this conference to be stimulating and enlightening, and I also hope you have a very enjoyable time on the ESU campus, and we hope you'll come back and visit us again whenever you can. Have a great day. And please join me in welcoming at this time, representing the Kansas Board of Regents, Regent Fred Logan.
Well, first I want to begin by recognizing a former colleague on the Board of Regents, Dr. Mildred Edwards, down here. Mildred afforded us a touch of class by actually having a PhD. She did a great job on the board, and She's done so much to advance the cause of equality here in Kansas through her work on the African American Affairs Commission. I also want to thank all of you and express my envy. I'm not going to be able to stay for the conference, but I've looked at the program and it looks fantastic. Thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for working on these important issues. I thought what might be good for me to do would be to give you my perspective now that I've had 3 years on the Board of Regents. And I'm happy to report that it's my view that diversity and multiculturalism are just viewed as simply part of who we are. It's not a matter of debate. It's who we are. This is our world. This is our Kansas. And I think that we've adopted goals. We've adopted a strategic plan that addresses those goals. But we've also done other things that I think really touch in important ways on making sure that everybody is included as we go along and that we do take care of diverse populations. So let me talk a little bit about that. Our board goals, we set board goals every year, and I don't think we necessarily even think about diversity per se, but what ends up happening is it's so much a part of what we do that we end up addressing those issues. I'll give you an example. One of the board goals that we just adopted last month was this. The board will receive and discuss a report on practices and trends in higher education that are designed to enhance the ability of students to compete and succeed in an increasingly global economy and business environment. I think that's the right kind of goal. That's pretty obvious, but also some of our goals have been maybe a little more subtle. We've really promoted transfer and articulation across the higher education system in the last 3 or 4 years. And that's important in my view because that provides access. It provides access for students maybe of more modest means, the kind of students that we need to take care of if we are going to be more inclusive. So when we make it easier for a student of modest means to attend a community college and then transfer the general education credits to a university, in my view, we're advancing the right kinds of causes in this state. This year we're taking another step and we're asking universities to help us define some career pathways so that there's actually a pathway all the way through that would transfer from community colleges or technical colleges all the way up through a 4-year university. These are challenging issues and they've not necessarily been easy. But to me, at least the way I look at it as a regent, I've always said, I will vote for an increase in tuition. I don't like doing it. But if I'm going to do that, I'm also going to do some things that do help bring along those students who are more modest means. And many times those students are from underrepresented groups. We focus on underrepresented groups. David mentioned our Foresight 2020 strategic plan. And a very important goal is to increase higher education attainment. And he mentioned increasing to 60% the number of Kansas adults who have a higher education credential of some kind. Our measure is state demographics with higher education participation levels of Kansas citizens, including underrepresented groups. And I'm happy to report that in the 3 years that that's been a goal, we've seen real progress. I was looking last night at the pie charts. You can find this on the board's website. But from the time that we adopted the strategic plan, the percentage of African Americans who make up our higher education system has increased from 7.6% to 8.1%. Hispanic students from 6.3% to 8.1%. That's not because of the work that we're doing. That's because of the work that you're doing and that the universities are doing. We're making headway. It's slow, but it's steady. We're pretty representative in terms of African Americans right now. We've got work to do on Hispanics, but we are making progress, and I just want you to know we are paying attention. Because as I say, I don't see, this is not something that's a matter of debate. I have served on the Board of Regents with a very ideologically diverse group of regents. Mildred's laughing over there because it's true. We've had some who've probably been described as liberal. We've had some who've been described as conservative. But I think we all view this is our world, and this is our Kansas, and we want to make it better. There are other ways that the board has demonstrated its commitment here, and I'll hearken back to one of my favorite times as a regent in March of 2013, when I testified in behalf of the board at a hearing on the issue of whether or not to repeal the law on in-state that gives in-state tuition to the children of undocumented immigrants. And I'm pleased to say that we were successful, that the issue was not even voted on in the House Federal and State Affairs Committee, and I'm proud of that. That's part of the Kansas that we live in. That's part of the Kansas. When I first really spent some time traveling around the state 25 years ago, the increase in the Hispanic population in southwest Kansas had just begun. Now it's very much a reality, and it's a very good thing indeed for our state. And we need to really strengthen that and bring those folks along. I think we're doing a lot of right things. It's not because of me, it's because of people like Mildred and a lot of people who've preceded me. But I just want you to know that we are very committed to the work that you're doing in small ways and large ways, I hope. And we're very grateful for everything that you're doing. I think you're going to have a great conference today. And as I say, I'm envious. Always envious when I come to the campuses. This is why we're on the Board of Regents, because we believe in what is happening here. And an important part of what's happening at all the campuses is that we're bringing everybody along. Thanks very much for having me.
Good morning. Looks like I have to introduce myself. My name is Ananda Javadana. I teach math in the Pittsburgh State University campus. About this time, it's usually I have a class of 30 students sort of not wanting to be there. I hope this is a better crowd, okay? You want to be here, right? Yes? Okay. Thanks for coming. I think it's my duty to talk a little bit about Dr. Tilford, tribute to Dr. Tilford, and talk a little bit about the conference. I'm one of the senior members of this committee, myself, Sheryl, and Dr. Gordon are the three most senior members of this committee. We have been doing this for about 6, 7, 8 years now. So several times I have met Mrs. Tilford and their children, but I have never met Dr. Tilford. Okay, I have to say that. He was born in 1936 in rural Oklahoma to a modest and underrepresented family. There were 4 siblings, and his father died when he was very young. And his mother raised them to be good citizens, and he achieved his bachelor's degree from Lincoln University at the age of 19. I'm saying this because most of our students take 5, 6 years to graduate, right? This kid, at the age of 19, he got his bachelor's degree in mathematics and chemistry. Think about that, okay? How hard it is to find a major these days, you know? Our students don't want to do math. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Rumble in the Jungle, meaning parents and children come to university. We try to recruit them to our department. So they walk by, and one of the kids walking by said, "Math," he did that. So that's what they think sometimes, you know. But Dr. Tilford was a math major, and he was committed to science. He got his master's degree a year later from Johns Hopkins University and came back to Wichita West School District and taught there for several years. And he received a grant from the Ford Foundation to do a PhD, a Doctor of Education from Oklahoma State University, and he completed that in the year of 1970. Then he was a faculty member for 4 years. All of a sudden, he was an assistant dean. And he was assistant dean for 14 years till 1988. Then he became the dean of graduate studies, and for the last 2 years of his life, from 94 to 96, he was the associate vice president of academic affairs at Wichita State University, one of the highest positions one can hold. That's his academic achievements. He was a wonderful man, from what I heard. I know Dr. Zoller and Dr. Joe Bass, two of the colleagues we have met through these activities. In the 2007 conference, Dr. Zoller did the tribute to Dr. Tilford, and he said this, I'm going to quote this. In a world that grows increasingly shrill and uncivil, Michael Tilford exemplified the good that can be done by lowering one's voice, being civil and courteous, and looking for sensible solutions to problems, even if those problems may take time to resolve, unquote. Okay. I mean, bunch of keywords here: lowering the voice, civil and courteous, looking for sensible solutions. There's a man right there. And Joe Bast used to be our colleague from KU Med Center, was a member of this planning committee from 1994 till 2011 when he retired. And I called him yesterday, and he wanted to say, good luck to everybody, good luck to the conference, and I'm sending his message here. Once he said, Michael Tilford was like a sage. He would sit in the planning committee, and the others will go in many other directions in the discussions, and he will say something with a very low voice and bring everybody back to the right direction. That's who Michael Tilford was. And I think most of you have met Mrs. Tilford and the 3 children. They used to come to the conference. I'm trying to bring her back to Pittsburgh. Let's see whether we can do that. She's kind of tired of coming to the conference, but we will try. We have 2 years coming. So that's about the Dr. Tilford, and going back to the conference story, as way back as 1988, the Board of Regents wanted to do something about recruitment and retention. Okay? So they were discussing this couple of years. In 1994, they started the Kansas Board of Regents Conference on Diversity and Multiculturalism, 94. And Michael Tilford was one of the starting members of that committee, as Joe Bast. So the conference was held in KSU in 94, 95, and in 96 it was KU. And then just after the conference, Dr. Tilford died. So the Board of Regents decided, in honor of Dr. Tilford, they will rename the conference as Michael Tilford Conference on Diversity and Multiculturalism. So the next year, the conference went to Michael's home. It went to Wichita State, 97. And 98, Washburn hosted it. And 99, the Board of Regents decided they're not going to have a conference like this, but they had mini conferences in each campus while the Keynote did the presentation through the state-of-the-art technology, ATV. Whatever it is, I guess, interactive, ITV, I guess, interactive TV or whatever. That was 99. In 2000, it went to KU Med Center. They have hosted it. And in 2001, there was no conference. Somehow they decided they don't want the conference. Board of Regents, from time to time, look at this and decide different things. And the next 2 years, we were not invited. Faculty were not invited. Only the chairs were invited. And it was combined with CRAC, Kansas Board of Regents Academic Chairs Committee or something. Then that was 2000. 2004, it went back to KU. 2005, I have no record. 2006, 7, 8, it was in Wichita State. That's when we started. Sheryl and I started. And 9, 10 at KU. 11, 12 at Kansas State. 13, 14 here. And next year it's going to be at Pittsburgh State University. And I think Fort Hays hasn't done it yet. So after the 2 years from Pitt State, I hope Ford State will step in and take it to their home, you know. And I want to invite everybody to come to Pitt State next 2 years. Have a good day.
Dr. Howe, would you like to come up to the stage? I'm Marla Darby. I'm on the faculty here at Emporia State University and also on the planning committee, I think for about 4 years now. So I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker today. And this is Dr. Bill Howe, and he will be working with us this morning and then again this afternoon. He's a leader in multicultural education. He is currently the program manager for culturally responsive education, multicultural education, bullying and harassment, gender equity, and civil rights at the Connecticut State Department of Education. Also, he is the chair of the Connecticut Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission and the past president of the National Association for Multicultural Education, or NAME. He is a leader in multicultural education. You can learn more about Dr. Howe on his website and on the Tilford website here at ESU. I discovered on his website that actually Dr. Howe and I have a bond. We both have our bachelor's degrees in special education. And so I know he has a passion for everything that he does, because I certainly have a passion for children who learn differently, and he does too. I would like to read to you a few comments that I saw on Dr. Howe's website about people who have attended some of his workshops. And after I read these, I'm like, wow, I cannot wait for today to be here. One person said, developing a multicultural curriculum was an eye-opening, enriching, and exciting workshop, which I will take with me both my professional and personal journey. Bill Howe was by far the most engaging and effective facilitator I have ever had. Another person said, I would highly recommend this workshop to all the teachers and administrators who are really concerned about the future of our country. And I have two more. The next one is, this workshop provided a safe environment for a diverse group of individuals to explore issues of value and beliefs to facilitate change for themselves and their schools. And finally, the Institute helped me tremendously to crystallize my thinking for how to engage students in multicultural theory and practice. I will continue to review my practice and how I can infuse what I have learned for the benefit of all my students. So I would like to introduce to you Dr. Bill Howe, and he will be working with us this morning and this afternoon. And after reading and listening to those comments, I know we're all excited to hear what he has to share with us and the work he will have us do this afternoon. So welcome, Dr. Bill Howe.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. You know, as I'm listening to the speakers before me, I'm thinking about how times have changed. When I first started doing teacher training and teacher professional development back in the dark ages, I used to begin the conferences by reminding teachers to put their cigarettes out. So now we're up to mute your cell phones, and the Twitter hashtag is. So I'm going to congratulate the planning committee for being so avant-garde and cutting edge. I do want to thank people who've asked me to be here. It's quite an honor to be here. I also want to make a special point of congratulating the planning committee. I've planned national and state conferences for 20, 25 years now, and I know how much hard work is involved. I always equate planning something like this is like planning a wedding. Okay? It's just a lot of details. Should we use the pink sweetener or the blue sweetener? And who's going to meet the keynotes and whatever. So I realized how much work's involved. So to everybody on the planning committee, thank you for this. And I've been very impressed how well organized this is, right down to having people greet me, and I feel very pampered. So thank you for being here. I wanted to quote my dissertation advisor. I finished at Teachers College, Columbia University back in '91. I think most of you weren't born yet, or quite a few of you weren't still around yet. But in '91, they assigned a dissertation advisor to us named Walt Sinlinger. And Professor Sinlinger was a professor emeritus. He was 80 years old when he was assigned to us as our advisor. And he talked about teaching at Columbia and being in faculty meetings with John Dewey and Carl Rogers. So it felt like a history lesson just having him for our advisor. And I quote him because I wanted to quote, and I'm going to mess up the quote too, John Dewey's quote about education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. And that's the theme I want to talk about today, about multicultural curriculum transformation. Isn't just about figuring out what I'm going to teach, it's also about how I'm going to teach and what teaching is all about. So today's talk is about culture and how we infuse culture into our curriculum, how we can transform our curriculum to truly prepare our students for the future. So, when people get introduced, you get the usual, he did this, he did that, he graduated here and there. I want to do it differently by telling you about who I am culturally. So down here is me. These are my parents. This is me in 1987 when I was born. I just want to see if you're awake, okay? But those are my parents. My mom was born in China in 1925. She was born a peasant, very poor. She had a large family. And in rural China, if you were poor, nobody went to school. If you had some money, the boys might go, but the girls never went. And girls then, and unfortunately still to today to some extent, are less valued than boys. Boys are seen as the parents' retirement plan because elderly people want more boys because as they get older, the boys will have an income and will take care of them as they get older. Girls, unfortunately, are seen as a mouth to feed. So my mother, when she was about 16, was given away as a servant to another family. Now, how many of you have teenage daughters? Or have ever had, okay? Can you imagine giving your daughter away, your teenage daughter? Shame on you. Don't feel bad. I had a teenage daughter, and if I had tried to give her away to another family to cook and clean when she was 16, they would have sent her back the next day. But that's what she did. She never had shoes until she was an adult, never went to school. She never learned how to read or write. She was so homesick, she ran away from the family and came back home to find that her mother had passed away while she was gone. And her new stepmom wouldn't feed her. And her brothers and sisters had to sneak food out of the house to feed her. My mother grew up hungry, she grew up poor, and that stayed with her her entire life. And for those of you who had relatives who lived through the Depression or lived through tough times, when you grow up poor, you never forget it. It's always in you somehow that, I gotta save, I gotta eat everything on my plate. I hate taking my mother to buffets because she hoovers the buffet. It's just recently I got her to stop taking the little ketchup packets from the restaurant because I would tell her, Mom, I can buy you a bottle of ketchup. She said, but this is free ketchup. I said, no, Mom, I can buy you a bottle of ketchup. So that's always with her, and that's the culture of poverty is something that we also have to keep in mind. So I'm glad some people mentioned the issue of class, because that stays with you. My dad, on the other hand, was born extremely wealthy. He was born into the Lee family, which is either spelled L-E-E or L-I, depending on your orientation. He was born extremely wealthy in China, and wealthy people in China are targets for kidnapping. And just like in the US, where our mythical heroes are often bank robbers, Jesse James, John Dillinger, the people that we think about historically as the people we sometimes want to envy, in some parts of China, is kidnappers. And when my dad was 7, he was kidnapped. He was tied up in a closet, hand and foot, for 2 years. And the kidnappers kept asking for ransom money. And in China, you give the ransom money, unlike here. So for 2 years, the family kept giving money after money after money until the family was finally bled dry. The kidnappers knew, because the family, being a prominent family, could tell in the newspaper that the family was broke. So they finally released my dad after 2 years tied up. At the age of 9, he arrived back home. He had to relearn how to use his hands and feet because they hadn't used them in 2 years. He arrived back home to find out that both his mom and his dad had passed away while he was gone. He was penniless. His grandfather, fearing that he would be kidnapped again, put him literally on the next boat to Canada. And he arrived at the age of 9, not speaking a word of English, with not a nickel in his pocket, as an orphan. At immigration, they asked him, "What is your name?" And I'm telling you this because people often wonder, how does a guy who looks like me have a name like William Alexander Howe? Now, who are the history majors here? Who was William Alexander Howe? This is a test of your history knowledge. She's shaking her head back there. Most people don't know. William Alexander Howe, American history, was one of the 2 British generals, the Howe brothers, that led the British forces against the Americans. I'm not related to him, okay? Immigration, they asked him what his name was, and he said, my name is, and for those my Asian colleagues out there, you know what I'm talking about. They asked him what his name was, and he said, my name is Li Howe. In many Asian cultures, you give your last name first. So it would be like, my name is Bond, James Bond. My name was Li Howe. Immigration in Canada was just like immigration here. If the immigration officer was tired or could care less, or if you had too many X's and Y's and Z's in your name, they just make a name up. So he ended up with the name Lem Howe, just reversed his name. My father, being 9 years of age in a new country, figured, I guess when you go to Canada, they just give you a new name and you go with it. So all my life I've had this name, William Alexander Howe, which is very interesting because often when I show up at events, if they haven't blogged or looked online to see what I look like, they're expecting someone in a tweed jacket, okay, coming in, and then this Asian guy walks in. For years, when we moved to Connecticut, we would get invitations from the Howe family in England. A beautiful envelope, gold embossed. Our family seal is amazing. It has lions on it. And we would be invited back. William Alexander Howe would be invited back to the Howe family reunion in England. And my wife, who is not Chinese, thought that was hysterical. Every year we'd get this invitation, come back to the castle. So my wife would always say to me, you should go, just to see the look on their faces when you walk into the castle. Tally-ho, I'm home, okay? Anyway, there's more to the story, but I wanted to move on. My dad eventually ended up living in northern Quebec, in a small sawmill town. It's all French-speaking. He was the only person in town who spoke English and French and Chinese. So everybody in town had to go to him when he wanted their government forms translated. And so he was very popular. He translated all everyone's forms, he did their taxes, he ran the only big restaurant in town. He also was an avid photographer, so he would take pictures for people. And then one day he also became a justice of the peace, because in this very Catholic town, if you had been divorced or whatever reason you couldn't get married in the Catholic Church, he would perform the ceremony. One day in his restaurant, he found that someone had left behind a banjo. And he was one of these people that just could naturally play. You've seen folks like that, right? He just picked up the banjo, he just realized he could play the banjo. And he did so well that he started a band. So picture this. This is northern Quebec, wintertime, cold, 8 feet of snow. You walk into the Grange, full of smoke. You hear this country and western band. You work your way to the front, and as you get to the front, you realize that the lead singer is a Chinese guy wearing cowboy clothes, playing a banjo, singing country and western music en français, okay, in French. Okay. So that was my dad. Okay. This is my lovely wife on the bottom right-hand side. That's the first picture I ever took of her. She would kill me if she knew I was still showing pictures of her wearing a short skirt. Okay. These are our two kids, Christopher and Katie. They're both in Chicago now. My son's not wealthy, he's a busy magazine publisher. He publishes 14 magazines. And my daughter is a poor social worker in Chicago. This is me. I love to travel. I have this huge bucket list of places that I want to go to. I love Muhammad's quote that, don't tell me how educated you are, tell me how much you've traveled. So for those of you who have been fortunate enough to travel, even in the United States, it's such a great learning experience. But here I am at the top in Victoria Falls and in Zimbabwe, on an elephant in South Africa, the Great Wall of China. And where am I on the bottom left there? Can you figure it out? The Garden of Gethsemane. I spent a week in Israel studying the Holocaust. And even if you're not a believer, just historically, imagine being in the Garden of Gethsemane. It was just such a moving experience. These are the associations I belong to. We are known by our associations. Those of you who have a FBI Homeland Security file on you, okay, they know exactly what associations you belong to. But I'm a big supporter of women's rights. I'm very concerned about tenure and promotion in higher ed. I'm working with Congressman Louis Slaughter to look at women and STEM fields and why they aren't getting the grants and why they aren't necessarily getting the promotions. Member of the National Association of Asian American Professionals. We're trying to encourage young people in their careers. On the editorial board of a couple of journals. I'm a big supporter of gay rights. So I belong to GLSEN, the Anti-Defamation League, and then in my bio, you read that I chair the Asian Pacific American Affairs Commission, and then I'm on the advisory board for the Association of Title IX Administrators. All right? So that's me. That's my cultural background. I encourage you to do the same with your students and with each other, because they may not know you as a cultural person. They may know you as Professor so-and-so or Mr. and Mrs. so-and-so. You need to let them know about your cultural background and talk about it. Because the more you do that, the more you encourage them to talk about their culture. We need to teach our students to be proud and aware of their culture, but that begins by us doing the same thing. Okay? So that's my first comment. Now, I need to do a demonstration. So I need a volunteer. This is when people start looking up at the ceiling. That young man, come on right up here, sir. Good, a brave volunteer. Let's give this brave soul some encouragement here. Were you campaigning on the way up here? Hey, we met last night, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Hey, Ricky.
Yep.
From Butler Community College. Recruiter, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. You're recruiting right now as we speak? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Ricky. This activity that you volunteered for involves two things. One is public humiliation.
I'm good at that.
You're good. And the other is incredible pain.
Okay.
You okay with that? Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's start with the public humiliation part. In front of all your colleagues, I'm going to test you in your math skills. Okay? Your career.
Is this the pain?
No, this is the public humiliation part. This is the part where your career may end right now.
Okay.
Okay. So in front of all your colleagues, all your peers, I'm going to test you in your math skills. You ready?
No.
No? Okay, Ricky, 2 plus 2 is?
4.
Minus 6.
-2.
2 times 12.
Am I taking the answer from the previous one?
2 times 12.
24.
Okay, good. Here's one I find a lot of K-12 teachers that I work with don't know the answer to. That's square roots. Yeah. What is the square root of 144?
12.
Good. Let's give them some encouragement, all right, in front of everyone. Okay. Okay, now, you got the right job. Okay, now it's your turn. I want you to turn quickly to someone you're sitting beside, your elbow partner, and just ask each other some simple math questions, all right? Go ahead, just for 30 seconds, simple math questions. All right, thank you. Let's go on to part 2. This is the part that hurts. All right, are you ready for this? So Ricky, why don't you come out here a bit? Just face me, okay? And I want you to put your hands like this. Please, sir. Hands like this, there you go. Can you all hear me okay? All right, you know what I'm gonna do?
You're gonna try to slap my hand.
That's right, I'm gonna try to slap your hands. Oh, he's good. Okay. You're good at this. I may have met my match here, okay. All right. Okay. So you've all done this then, right? Okay. So we're gonna play again. Okay. This time we're doing it for real. Okay. So I'm actually very good at this.
Okay.
All right. I'm not gonna miss this time.
Okay.
I'm gonna actually slap you.
Okay.
It's gonna hurt.
Wait, hold. Time. Are you gonna slap my hands? You gonna slap me?
Oh no. Just your hands.
Oh, okay. I was just like, there's a trick to this. Okay.
Okay. You ready? Mm-hmm. You look like a fit guy. You do any martial arts at all?
I don't know.
No?
You'll find out.
You'll find out. No judo, karate, jiu-jitsu? No?
No.
Well, I have a blue belt in Taekwondo.
Okay.
And I'm going to test for black belt this summer.
I got a brown belt on.
Ah. So my sensei says I'm very good. When you get the black belt, you spend a lot of time breaking boards. Breaking a 2x4 is nothing. I want to break a cinder block. So my sensei says I'm very good, I'm very fast, I never miss.
Okay.
So I'm going to slap you. Okay? And it's going to hurt.
Okay.
Is there any security around here? Because there'll be a blood-curdling scream and security will come running. All right? You ready? Mm-hmm. Now here's the trick. I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to answer it correctly, and then you can move your hands. I'm going to ask you a math question, answer it correctly, and then you can move. All right?
Are you gonna try to slap my hand?
Oh, yes, I'm going to try to slap your hands. Now, if you move too soon, you have to stand there and not move, and I'm going to wind up and smack you one.
Okay, that's fine.
If you get the question wrong, you have to stand there, and I'm going to smack you one.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to ask you a math question. You're going to answer it correctly, and then you can move your hands.
Okay.
Okay? You move too soon, I get a free smack. You get the question wrong, I get a free smack. You ready?
You only smack after I get the question answered, though, right?
Huh?
Okay. That's
Okay, all ready? It's a time test, all right?
fine.
2 plus 2.
4.
Okay. 8 times 9.
That's 72.
That was too soon, right? Too soon? Okay, that means free smack. All your colleagues just threw you under the bus, okay?
That's all right.
All right, don't move. I'm sorry to do this to you,
That's all
Ricky.
right.
Okay. 6 times 5.
Too
soon, Too soon? Free smack. Hold them there, Ricky. Don't move. Okay, don't move. Here you go. 7 times 8. 4 times 6. 8 times 11. 9 times 2.
I'd rather take the free smack.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you're not off the hook, because I want you to go smack someone. So this is your chance, all right? All these years, okay. So I want you to pick a partner, but here's the partner I want you to pick. I want you to look around the room. So don't pick people you're sitting with. Don't pick the friends you came with. Don't pick your drinking buddies. You know, pick someone that you don't know. So just glance around the room, eyeball somebody you don't know, but also I want you to eyeball someone who's as different from you as possible. All right, so ladies, try to pick a man for a partner. If you're on the tall side, pick someone of average height. If you're incredibly good looking, try to pick someone exactly the opposite. Okay, let's do this quickly. Everyone get up and go find a new partner. Thanks, Ricky.
Thank you.
Good sport. Okay, has everyone got a partner? Please shake hands with your partner. Shake hands so I know you've got one. If you're not shaking hands with someone, it means you don't have a partner. Okay, so one of you gets to play my role. You get to be the slapper. So decide who's going to be the slapper. And the other person, the slappee. Those of you who are playing my role, the slapper, you have your hands palms up. The other person who has to answer the math question is palms down. So you can begin. Ask your partner a simple math question. Your partner, you have to answer correctly before you move. All right, you move too soon, you get it wrong, your partner gets to smack you one. Okay? Go ahead. Thank you. Now you can switch. Your partner gets to smack you. Go ahead. Thank you. You can stop smacking each other and take your seats. Thank you. Thank you. So let's find out, what did you learn from doing this activity? What did you learn from doing this activity? Yes, sir. I can't do math as fast as I can move my hands. Okay, good. What else did you learn? You forgot to slap when it was your turn. Do you have kids? Okay. Okay. And yes? You're not good at multitasking. Okay. All right. Yes? Oh, your partner was too nice. Okay. All right. Now, I do this activity a lot, and I begin most of my sessions with this activity because I want to make a point. And the point is that when I became a teacher back in the dark ages, I was told that you really should become a teacher. The pay is awesome. You get summers off, and all you have to do is teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. So as long as you teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, you've earned your pay, because that's your primary responsibility. I've since learned that that's wrong. Our primary responsibility as educators is not teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, or chemistry, or philosophy, or French literature. Our primary responsibility as educators is to ensure that every student who walks into our classroom feels safe, both physically and emotionally. Because if they don't, and there's tension there for whatever reason, that's going to interfere with their learning. And too often now, with the issue of K-12 bullying and harassment, the issues of campus sexual assault, 60 college campuses are being investigated for sexual assault violations. The tension on campuses can be pretty high. Our responsibility is to look in the eyeball of every student who walks into our classroom and to make them a promise that no one is going to say or do anything to you as long as you're in my classroom. Okay? You will be safe as long as you're in my classroom. Okay? So our primary responsibility is to ensure that safety. okay, before we begin thinking about the subject that we're going to teach. Are my folks feeling safe? So who is this? Sisyphus, good. All right, who was Sisyphus? No Greek mythology fans here? Sisyphus angered the gods. And as his punishment, Sisyphus had to push this boulder up the hill. And he would push and push and push, and he'd almost get to the top, then he'd lose his grip, then the boulder would roll back down to the bottom again. They'd start again, pushing the boulder all the way up to the top, he'd lose his grip, then the boulder would start rolling back down again. Okay? This is what we are like as educators when we are trying to teach our subject, but we're ignoring the climate that's in our classroom and on our campuses. We have to create safe, physically and emotionally safe climates for our students in order for them to learn. So keep that as a primary responsibility. The other reason that I did this activity is that in my classes, part of what I try to instill is that infusing multiculturalism into your curriculum is both about the content, making sure you infuse ethnic content into your curriculum, but also about the process. So I try to do as many activities as I can where students interact with each other. Now, you've all been in undergraduate classrooms, Psych 101, it's 150 people in the auditorium, and all year long you've seen this young person over there in the red shirt, and at the end of the semester you still haven't introduced yourselves to them. Right? Part of our job as educators is that we have to teach kids to mix it up. And try to do as many activities as possible where they interact with each other. Because part of their education in your class, no matter what your subject is not just a subject, but learning how to get along with each other. Okay? This area is extremely important. Now, I noticed one of your sessions today is talking about diversity, the diversity wheel. When we talk about diversity, I also wanted to remind people it's not just about race. Race matters in this country. It has, probably always will. It's a serious issue. Our racial problems, as you know, have not gone away because we elected a black man president twice. Okay? In some ways, it's gotten worse since President Obama has been elected. So race is a critical issue in our society, but there's also other areas of diversity, too, that's important for us to look at. Issues of age, gender, ethnic heritage, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. All our language abilities. You may have a class of what you think are monocultural students, but in actuality, there's a great deal of diversity amongst your class. So play also upon that. Teach people to be sensitive to issues of race, but also gender, sexual orientation, and religion. Okay. So we have to look at this concept of part of our purpose of an education is teaching, preparing students for the world of work. When I started teaching, it wasn't probably so much long ago, that businesses used to accuse us educators by saying, why can't Johnny read? Do you remember hearing that? Why can't Johnny read? You don't hear that anymore. What I hear from business and industry is, I need employees that are culturally competent. Having a degree is okay, but I need people who are culturally competent. And that's something that is absolutely essential in our world of work. So here's what the statistics say to us. Right? The Fortune 500 companies, every year they interview the HR directors of Fortune 500 companies. Any HR people in here? Some HR people, good. They interview HR people, and they ask them, tell us about the last 3 people you fired. Why were they fired? And you know what the number one reason normally is? Okay. It's the lack of social skills. Now, back in the dark ages, people were primarily fired because of a lack of technical skills. Couldn't type fast enough, couldn't drive a truck in a straight line without hitting a pole, right? Couldn't weld without making a lot of boo-boos. Today, often the most common reason people get fired is because of a lack of social skills. So think about this. If you hired this gentleman, and I'm picking on you because you're sitting right up front here, Jason, you hired Jason. What do you do, Jason?
I work in the Center for Student Involvement here at Emporia State.
Excellent. Okay, so hire Jason, and you shortly find out that Jason never learned how to do Microsoft Excel. And his job requires doing all kinds of spreadsheets. So what do you do for Jason? You teach him in 1 week? Okay. You send him away to a workshop, right? Piece of cake. You send Jason away to a workshop, he comes back in a week, and now he's a master of Microsoft Excel. Right? That's easy to do. But what happens if Jason's problem is not a lack of technical skills? What happens if Jason's problem is a lack of social skills? What happens if Jason's problem is that he's just a mean, miserable SOB? What workshop do you now send him away to where he's going to come back in a week and he'll be cured? Okay? I'm sure you're a nice guy, Jason, okay? But this is the issue that we deal with, that it's far easier to deal with the lack of technical skills than the lack of social skills. And this is where we're missing out on the boat, is we're not teaching folks to get along. Okay? How many people, do you remember your first job? First job you ever had? Were you fired from it? Yale did a study of people fired from their first job. And they found out the most common reason people were fired from the first job was the inability to get along with others. Often people who grew up in monocultural environments who never had to interact with people of diverse cultural backgrounds. Okay. RAs. Okay. RAs, their association, often talk about the most common problem they have with people having dormitory experiences is the prevalence of people who have not met or known other people who are different. I teach graduate courses at 3 different colleges. These are all aspiring teachers. And the majority of them never met anybody different until they went off to college. And their college experience is the first time they met anybody who's green or purple or this religion or that religion. And this is an issue that we have to be able to deal with. Okay? So back in the old days, okay, as an educator, we taught reading, writing, and arithmetic. And we used things called blackboards and chalk. Remember my first principal, we loved our first principal. We thought he was just, I guess back then he was the grooviest person we knew. Okay? But he seemed to be very avant-garde. He was always telling us about the newest and the latest inventions and creations and philosophies of education. And one day at a staff meeting, he came into the staff meeting with a little box, sat in front of him. He said, "This is going to revolutionize teaching. It's going to absolutely change how we teach." And we were so excited because he always had good stuff. And he opened up this box and he pulled out a piece of yellow chalk. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay? Do you remember? And we thought, my gosh, yellow chalk. You know? What are they going to think of next? Okay, it's yellow chalk. So that's the era that I grew up in. We taught reading, writing, and arithmetic because that's all what was required for the jobs and industries in this country. People worked in farms or worked in factories. Now we know that most of those are gone. Anything in agriculture now is very high tech, very few manual labor jobs in agriculture, and the manufacturing is either automated or gone overseas. So if that's the case, what skills do our students need? What are we giving them to prepare them for the world of work? Back in the day, our students would compete with Tom and Dick and Jane in town for jobs on local farms or factories. Nowadays, our students are competing with students on a global basis. They are competing with Brazil, Russia, India, China. Those are our competitors from the American workforce. China, for example, is a huge competitor for us. China has more AP honor students than we have students. India, if you meet someone who's Indian American in this country, 80% of Indian Americans have a master's degree or higher. 2/3 of the doctors in this country are Indian American. 2/3 of the NASA scientists in this country are Indian American. We're competing on a global basis. We have to make sure our students are prepared regardless of what major they're involved in. The businesses know that. Corporations like Nike and McDonald's, they make most of their money overseas. So even though our economy is going through some rough time, they're still making money overseas. Now, how many of you have traveled overseas and seen a McDonald's somewhere? Look at the hands, like a McDonald's, okay? Have you seen a Starbucks in another country? Okay. Anybody been to Italy? Italy? Did you see a McDonald's or a Starbucks there? I just think how sad it is you go to Italy with all that food and wine and you're going to McDonald's, right? But that's what's happening. We have Americanized businesses overseas. The fastest growing franchise in China is Kentucky Fried Chicken. They open up fried chicken restaurants on a regular basis in China. These are the 3 most populous countries in the world. We are the 3rd biggest, but look how puny we are compared to the other 2. And we know about the academic achievement and technical competence of people from the other 2 countries. We're tiny in comparison. In terms of economy, we're the #1 economic superpower as of today. For years, #2 was Japan, and then China jumped up to become #2. A couple years ago, the economists tell us that in a very short amount of time, China is going to become the #1 economic superpower. We have to prepare our students for that eventuality. So we have to get our students thinking globally. Okay? Those of you who have traveled overseas, you met people who spoke English, right? You met people who knew who the President of the United States was, right? Okay? What's the name of that big country just north of us? It's often pink on the map. Okay? Canada, okay? How many provinces does Canada have? Has 10. What's the capital of Canada? Ottawa, good. Who's the Prime Minister of Canada? Stephen Harper, okay? Now you ask any Canadian how many states, and you ask them what are the capitals, you ask them who the presidents are, they all know that. I grew up in Canada, we had to memorize all of those. Other students in other countries know so much more about us than we know about them. We've got to teach our students to be much more aware globally. And look at this. One of the advantages other countries have is that 7 of the 10 most watched TV shows in the world are American. 7 of the 10 most watched TV shows in the world are American. I was in Shanghai a couple years ago, and I asked our tour guide, he was about 23, I asked him, what do young people do for fun in China? And I was expecting the typical answer, oh, we go to the park and do Tai Chi. Now they're still going to the park, but instead of doing Tai Chi, what they're doing is ballroom dancing. Okay? In the old days, you would go to China, and they would drag you into the Tai Chi classes and want to teach you Tai Chi. Now they will drag you into the park and say, could you help me with my foxtrot? Okay? Could you help me with my paso doble? They become much more Americanized. So I asked the young tour guide, what do young people do in China for fun? And he said, we love to watch television. I said, really? Well, what kind of shows do you watch? And he said, we love to watch American soap operas. Really? What shows do you like? And he said, oh, every Sunday we get together, and this is back a few years ago. Every Sunday we get together because we love to watch that great American soap opera called Desperate Housewives. Jason, you ever seen Desperate Housewives? Never seen. How about you, sir? No. You have? Okay. Now, does your neighborhood look like Wisteria Lane? Are there Beamers and up and down the street? Are people sleeping with each other in your neighborhood? Are people burying dead bodies? Is there a hot plumber that everyone's after? We don't know. Okay, all right. They are so influenced by television. Okay? So my question to you, the image I want you to get in your head is that your graduates, when they finally get their diploma, if you were to parachute them into another country, how well would they do? That should be the vision we have in the end of our mind. We will be successful as an education institution when our graduates, we can plunk them anywhere in the world and say, I can do this. You know, I can learn a second language, I can learn to like sushi, I can learn different customs. I'm used to being with people who are different. That's our goal as educators in transforming our curriculum. Okay? Encouraging another language, right? Learning another language is essential in today's world. Okay? These are the 9 most multilingual countries in the world. Aruba, Dutch, I can't even pronounce the second language, Papiamento, English, and Spanish. Those of you who have traveled, often you will run into people in other countries who speak 2 or 3 different languages. We are the only industrialized nation in the world where most of us are monocultural, monolingual. We're still what? The only major industrialized nation that has not switched over to the metric system. Right? We did that in Canada decades ago. Okay? So we've got to learn other languages, encourage language to develop it. China soon is going to become the #1 English-speaking country in the world. Right? South Africa has 11 official languages. These kids here in Cape Town, South Africa speak on average 4 or 5 different languages. So think about this. If you're an employer and you want to hire someone, who would you rather hire? Someone from Emporia who only speaks English, or someone from Emporia who speaks 4 or 5 different languages? It's a no-brainer. Okay? This is where we're aiming at in education in preparing our students. The other issue is that, see this young person in the middle here? he asked me where I'm from. And when I get asked that overseas, it's not like here when people ask me where you're from, okay? When I get asked that overseas, I never tell people I'm from Connecticut, because people don't know Connecticut. And so instead, I tell them I'm from New York, which is right next door. It's kind of cheating. But as soon as you say New York to any kid in the whole world, they all go, oh, New York. Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, they all know New York. They know so much more about us than we know about them. So this young person says to me, where are you from? I say, I'm from New York. He says, oh, you're from New York. Do you know Usher? When I told them no, they actually seemed kind of surprised. How can you be from New York and not know Usher? Okay? They're so much better prepared than we are. Workers today who speak English, Spanish are considered gold. In Connecticut, 20 school districts have stopped teaching French, and they've now started teaching Mandarin also. So the trifecta of languages, English, Spanish, and Mandarin. If you speak all three, right, that's the platinum standard, and that's what employers are looking for. Okay? Another issue in terms of our curriculum design is understanding and working with bias. Okay? So take a good look at this picture. What do you see? Just yell out, just describe to me. Any artistic folks here? Describe for me what you're seeing. Segregation, okay, all right. What else do you see? I've never heard anyone say that. Okay, that's a good point. That's being observant. Okay, not enough ice cream, all right? What else do you see? He's sitting in a lawn chair. Who's getting all the attention at the table? Right? Linus at the end, all right? Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts comic strips, at one point introduced an African-American character. Do you know what his name is? Franklin, good. And he didn't tell his publishers that. And the cartoonists, I believe, send their cartoons a month in advance before they go in the newspaper. He sent the cartoons in, and the publishers knows, whoa, what is this? There's an African-American kid here. They asked Charles Schulz, what are you doing? And Charles Schulz said it was time that his cartoon strip represented real life. Right? And his publisher said, no, we don't want to get into that whole thing. It's just too messy. Charles Schulz said, tough bananas. Okay, that's the way it's going to be. And being Charles Schulz, he got his way. Charles Schulz was trying to make a point. And his point is that racism can be extremely subtle. Some of us don't see racism. Some of us will walk in the room and not see the inequities. Some of us will walk in the room and not see that all the green kids are sitting at this table, all the orange kids sitting at this table, or there's one kid sitting by himself. I hate walking into a high school cafeteria and seeing a special ed kid sitting at a table by himself with his para, and no one else sitting with them. Okay? This is the issue. You need to be able to see and look for injustice and inequity and do something about it. You know, if you can look at this and not see that not only is the only person of color sitting by himself, he's sitting in a substandard chair. Even the dog has a better chair than he does. Yogi Berra. Who knows who Yogi Berra is? Okay. I mention Yogi Berra to my graduate students, and they go, oh, yeah, we watch the cartoons all the time. Him and Boo Boo. No, Yogi Berra. Okay? Yogi Berra, Yankees catcher, was invited to a father and son picnic. When he arrived at the field, there was a field full of picnic tables filled with sons with their dads. He arrived in his car. His handlers were leading him towards the head table where all the important people were. And as he was being led to the front of the field, he notices there's a picnic table way at the back with just boys and no adults. I guess that's just training being a catcher. You kind of will look for things. And he said to his handlers, how come there's no dads with that bench full of boys? And his handler said, don't worry about those boys. They're the orphans. So what do you think Yogi Berra does? He left his handler, walked to the back of the field, and he sat down with his table full of orphans. And for this group of boys, for one afternoon, they had a dad. Not only did they have a dad, they had Yogi Berra as their dad. Yogi Berra saw something that needed to be fixed, and he did something about it. We have to adopt that same kind of practice ourselves, seeing for inequities and dealing with it. Mickey Mantle. Y'all know who Mickey Mantle is, right? Yes? No? Okay. It hurts me to tell you all these Yankee stories because I'm a Red Sox fan, but Mickey Mantle riding the bus. Excuse me, I forgot where I was. I'm sorry. Thank you. The Yankees, when they traveled, would travel on a team bus. But when they went south of the Mason-Dixon line, it became segregated. And whenever they stopped at a diner to eat, all the white players got off the bus and went in to eat. All the black players had to sit on the bus, and the cook would bring out sacks of food and feed them on the bus. Mickey Mantle was known on occasion to go in, get his plate, and come back out and sit on the bus and eat with black players. Again, someone who saw an issue and did something about it. Okay? Kids are not born racist. Those of you who have children, anybody got a 1-year-old, 2-year-old? Are they racist? No, they're not. They don't have little Klan outfits. Not the Nazi soldier. Okay. Early childhood experts tell us that children are not born racist. You put a 1-year-old, 2-year-old into a playpen, they'll play with anyone. Right? It's at the age of 2 and 3 that they become aware. It's like when your computer goes from a sleep mode, you hit the space bar and it wakes up. At the age of 2 or 3 is when children become aware. They start looking at things like skin color and hair and eyes and facial. They notice differences. They just notice differences. It's at that point in time we teach them to be racist or we teach them to be accepting. We take them down one path or we take them down the other path. We teach kids to be racist. We teach them. They weren't born that way. We teach them that way. Part of our job as educators is sometimes we have to unlearn some of those behaviors amongst our students because they come with that ingrained in them. And we can do that. The research clearly shows that students are the main purveyors of information about racism and other inequities to parents. Parents get most of their information about social injustice from listening to their students come back from school. So our work is very powerful. It reaches farther than we think. So what do you see here? This little boy's name is Alex. Alex's mom sent me this picture. Alex's mom raised Alex to be a regular kid. Didn't want him labeled special needs, didn't want him labeled handicapped, raised him to be a regular kid. Going to regular schools, regular class, joint studying, and whatever. Alex tried out for the school choir, got in, and this was the first night the choir was performing, the first performance of the school year. You remember how exciting that was? All kids are all dressed up. Maybe you bring flowers to them, and they're standing at the front of the stage, they're looking for grandma and grandpa and waving at them. It's a very exciting event. So Alex's mom was excited to go see her son perform in the school choir. She arrives in the auditorium and she took this picture. What's wrong with this picture? Any music people here? Is there a choral reason? Is there a musical reason why you might have done this? Try to give them the benefit of the doubt. What would you do if you were Alex's mom? Oh, yes. If Alex was my son, I would own that school. I would own that school, all right? So the problem is, Alex could have easily be placed in the front row. Not only that, but they could have put chairs on either side of Alex, and students could have sat with him so he didn't stand out so much. There are all kinds of things to include. Our last night's speaker talked about inclusion, all right? This is what inclusion means. It's not just doesn't mean having one of these, one of those, one of those. It actually means inclusion. They could have blended Alex in. But the message I want to get out is that we will have done our jobs correctly if those students, his classmates, had said to the choir director, why is Alex over there? We would have done our jobs correctly if the students say, we're on strike. throw down your sheet music. We're not singing it until Alex is over here. We've got to teach our students to be aware of inequities and do something about it. All right? All the research on bullying, there's 1,000 programs you can buy. There's 1,000 people who say they're experts in bullying. The major research shows that the most effective way to stop bullying and harassment is to teach our children the concept of I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. When we teach kids in college-age students to look after each other, bullying and harassment goes down. Okay. All right, so this leads us to, amongst the work that we do in looking at our curriculum, we need to keep in mind that you're teaching chemistry, you're teaching physics, you're teaching geography, you're teaching math, whatever subject you're teaching, they need those academic skills, but they also need work skills and personal skills in order to succeed. And it's our job to infuse that into our curriculum along with cultural aspects. And there are 7 critical social skills that are important that we teach our students. All of us have that responsibility of reinforcing those social skills. And I want to talk about those social skills in a cultural context. Because whenever we look at norms and mores, we have to keep in mind that they have to be in a context. So these 7 social skills are important in the American workplace, which is still white, male, Protestant dominated. So we have to keep that in mind. And we have to prepare our students to enter into that eventuality, students of color and women. Okay? And so it's important for us as we teach those skills that we may be teaching something that's antithetical to how they were raised. So I want to talk about these social skills from an Asian American perspective, which is what I know the most. Okay? Now, keep in mind that there are many different kinds of Asian Americans. Right? So this is one perspective from one person. Right? Just because we all look alike doesn't mean we all think alike. Okay? So it's important to understand basic Asian values. You know, as we have our students. Brian was telling me you have students from all over the world. Bolivia, I remember, as one of them. When we get foreign exchange students or students just from other parts of the country, it's important to understand what their values are and how they are raised. Some basic Asian values are, we believe strongly in family and education. That's the mythical Asian students do well because parents push their kids for high academic achievement. Right? So that's a given. In many Asian cultures, we believe strongly in family. My mother is 88 years old and failing now, and her biggest fear is that we'll put her into a nursing home. That's a struggle for us because Asian Americans tend not to put our elderly in their nursing homes. We keep them in our homes, which can be extremely trying if they have Alzheimer's or some other kinds of issues. We believe in conformity and harmony. It's the Rodney King, can we all just get along philosophy. We believe strongly in trying to keep harmony. We believe in benevolence and obligation. We believe in helping out others. We believe in returning favors. If you do something nice for my son or daughter, I will make sure I do something nice for you. All right? When you get invited to a party at someone's house, come for dinner at Jason's house. Jason's having dinner on Saturday at his house. What's the first thing you've got to ask Jason? What shall I bring, right? And Jason says, oh, you don't need to bring anything. What do you do anyway? You bring something, all right? That's a basic value. What time is this dinner, Judge? We believe in endurance and sacrifice. That's why for a lot of families who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, new arrivals, families are working 24/7. So they believe in working hard for the next generation. How many of you are first-time graduates in your family? Okay, your parents, your grandparents worked hard for you to be able to do that. And I know you all know that, but that's this issue of endurance and sacrifice. We also, very important for us, is a loss of face or shame and honor. The family name, the personal integrity of Asian Americans is very important to us. Integrity for us, our reputation is one of our most valued assets. So we get concerned when that becomes threatened. So, what do you see here? No one wants to admit it here. What do you see? The gentleman in the blue polo shirt there. Yes, sir. That's you? Yeah, you're the one turned around, the one that looks like you're really fit? Okay, you see John Wayne. Okay, so what is John Wayne doing here? Walking into a saloon, right? Jason, you've been to a lot of saloons, right? You know what this? Of course, okay. So you all seen Westerns, right? A noisy saloon. Incredibly noisy, packed full of people, glasses clinking, guns being fired in the air, chairs being hit over other people's heads, honky-tonk piano going, just incredible din. And then suddenly, the stranger comes to the door. What happens? Dead silence, right? A person walks into a room and then there's dead silence. How many of you have had that experience yourself? Walking into a room and they're noisy and talking, all of a sudden you walk in and all of a sudden, okay? Ladies, if you've ever walked into a ballroom or a meeting and all men and then you walk in, okay? People of color, when we walk into a room that's predominantly Caucasian, and then suddenly a person of color is in the midst, all right? Often, silence. It's happened to me 1,000 times. It still happens to me. And when that happens to me, it tells me something, that people are not used to or not comfortable with difference. And people of color, we know when you're not comfortable with us. Women, you know when men aren't comfortable with you. We can sense it. And it happens to me time and time again when I've walked into settings, into groups where there are people who are laughing and joking and having a good time, and then you walk into their midst and suddenly they become very quiet. And it leaves us in a quandary, because what do? Do I go away because they're obviously uncomfortable with me, or do I learn to work the room? That's something we have to teach our students, to work the room. Because if I go in there and not say anything, they're going to be uncomfortable. And that's a lifelong burden for people of color and women, to have to learn to make other people feel comfortable with them. Okay? It's a lifelong burden to have to always go in and be the outgoing person, the one that takes the first step, all right? Because if you don't, they will remain uncomfortable. And I've walked into groups of people, and sometimes I just don't have the energy. I just don't want to do it anymore. So I just walk into a group and I'll just stand there and see what they say. And it's interesting, when you have that awkward silence, those of you as parents, when you've interrogated your kids, it's interesting the comments you get. And one person in a meeting, I walked into the group, clearly uncomfortable with me being there, and I just waited, because I said, I'm not going to see these people again, what do I care, all right? And I just waited. And one person finally couldn't take it anymore, and he blurted out the first thing he could think of. He blurted out, "I love Chinese food." Well, I'm kind of like Italian myself, but that's okay, all right? On another occasion, and some of us know what we're talking about, because we hear this all the time. Right? Another occasion, someone said to me, I was on vacation in North Dakota. We stopped in Fargo, and we were really hungry, and we found this great Chinese restaurant. Really nice people there, really very friendly. Do you know them? Oh yeah, we have this big newsletter. It goes all around the country. Okay. I know everybody who runs every Panda Express, every Chinese kitchen. We all know each other. We're all related, right? So what that does is that it forces us, when we go into a room, is that we have to work the room. Hi, how are you? My name is Bill. I speak English. How you doing? Okay. Hi, how you doing? How are the Royals doing? Okay. All right, and so on. We have to do that, and that's uncomfortable, even for a regular person. Okay? Just notice today when you walked into the room, you know some people, you don't know some people, but there's a little bit of uncomfortableness, a little bit of social anxiety, because there's a lot of very important people here today, and so we're obviously a little uncomfortable. It's like your first school dance again, just trying to figure out where the cool kids are, okay, and is anyone going to sit with me? So our problem then is that as part of our education of kids is that we've got to teach them, everyone, the social skills. All of our students, regardless of color, the social skills in order to get along. And it's absolutely critical that they learn how to work the room. Okay? So 7 critical social skills that need to be taught. Speaking up, small talk, smiling, being assertive, handshaking, eye contact, and self-promotion. Okay? So let me go through these very quickly, one at a time, to see what these means. Right, speaking up. When I mean speaking up, I mean using your outdoor voice. Now, I was raised in a generation where ladies were taught to be quiet, because let all the boys do all the talking. All right? and girls were considered brash if they talked out loud. I also am from a culture where we're taught to be quiet, to defer to other people, let other people speak. I was raised that way. I quickly learned when I started working was that if I did not interrupt people, I would never get a word in edgewise. All right? So we need to learn to speak up. Now the problem is that in Asian cultures and many other cultures, we're taught to be quiet and soft-spoken. And people who are quiet and soft-spoken are good. That's the proper thing. So to say to an Asian American child, you need to speak up, you need to project your voice, all right? It's something that you have to realize it's antithetical to how we were raised. Because in the American workplace, when you speak up with a loud, authoritative voice, all right, you speak louder with authority. People who are quiet and soft-spoken are seen as insecure and timid. Small talk. Okay? Asian American culture, we're often taught to be quiet. So when we're in a group, we tend to be not the ones that are doing the speaking. All right? I always teach my students, my teacher ed students, when you go to your first staff meeting and the principal's standing up front, you look at the principal, you smile, you nod your head, you pretend you're writing down things that are important. Every once in a while you go, wow. Write down furiously, okay? But never go to a meeting without saying something, because you want to make sure people knew you were there. So Asian American values, we're taught to be quiet, defer to others, and don't interrupt. We've got to teach students that in the American workplace, we've got to learn how to make small talk, because that's how people become comfortable. So who's good at small talk here? You ready, sir? You good at small talk? Yeah. How do you get people to talk when they don't want to talk? Okay. Talk about sports, okay. What else do you do? Yeah. Pardon? Ask questions about themselves. What do people like to talk about the most? Themselves, right? Now, do you know people that whenever you talk to them, they're always talking about themselves? They never ask how you are doing? Okay? People love to talk about themselves. How many people have been to a wedding or a bar mitzvah lately? You ever been to a wedding and you got stuck at the table with the people who don't talk? You know, you're trying to carry on a conversation. Hi, how are you? Where are you from? Okay? You got these one-word answers. You got this like they're comatose, right? Meanwhile, all the fun kids are over here, right? They're laughing and they're yucking it up, all right? And you want to switch 10 cards and go sit with the fun kids, all right? We've got to teach kids how to make small talk. So I have my students practice this. Whenever they come to class, I say, just don't walk in and plunk your laptop down. You work the room, you shake the other people's hands, you say, how was your week? What did you think of that reading assignment? Because that's part of what's going to help them get a job, learning how to make small talk. Smiling. And Asian Americans, like many Eastern European countries, tend not to smile. And part of it's culture. I had 12 teachers from Azerbaijan visit once, and I was telling them about this, and they said, why do Americans smile so much? I said, well, that's just the way we are. If you look at pictures of many Asian countries, you don't see people walking down the street with these big happy smiles, all right? It's kind of a somber look. My mother's 88. Whenever I have her at a party or whatever, people will inevitably say, you know, your mom doesn't look very happy. I'll look over and realize, oh, darn it, she's not smiling. I have to walk over and say, Mom, smile, okay? People think you're sad, okay? Put a big smile. Then she'll remember to put her smile on, okay? So it's not something that people are raised with culturally. Okay? Now, I'm an amateur photographer. And the professionals, when I go to a wedding, I hang around the photographer because I want to steal ideas. I ask them about this issue about smiling, and they say, you know, people spend a fortune, they spend years planning their wedding, right down to the blue packets versus the pink packets. What they forget is to learn how to smile. And when he shows up, he says, I'm amazed at the number of grooms and brides, or whoever, moms and dads, I have to keep taking the picture over and over again because he just don't, you have a lovely smile, by the way. He's a gorgeous smile, okay? So that stood out to me. You know, when I worked the room, I looked for those gorgeous smiles, and that's what stands out to me. I tell my graduate students that. When you get a job, you're in a staff meeting, you look at the principal and you smile, okay? You get their attention, you smile. So learning how to smile is a critical skill. Actors actually spend time practicing smiling, standing in front of a mirror, because if you don't smile, those muscles become atrophied. It's like if you don't do a lot of this, these become flabby. If you don't do a lot of, okay, these become flabby. Right? So actors will actually stand in front of a mirror and pretend they're sucking on a lemon and make those facial muscles go up and down. People who smile, juries tend to not convict people with great smiles. They think, well, actually, this woman has such a gorgeous smile. She couldn't have embezzled all that money from the university, right? She has this gorgeous smile. Okay? So please teach your students to practice their smile. So do it right now. Just turn to each other and give each other your best Hollywood smile. Now look at this little baby here. Now, the great thing about babies often photograph extremely well because babies aren't conscious of a camera. There's a photographer somewhere in the room. If he's been around you sometime today and he's pointing the camera at your table right away, so we've become very self-conscious with cameras. Babies aren't self-conscious. So look at this little baby. Look at that. Yeah? Your baby probably looks like that, okay? Look at Heinz Ward here, football player, known for his great smile. Look at that face. Isn't that the kind of guy, Jason, you love to go out and have a beer with? Okay? Yeah, look at that, just a smile. Okay? So smiles are very important in projecting an image. Right? And when you're competing for jobs in this job market, all right, you gotta learn to smile. Now look at these. Remember when Mel Gibson got arrested in California? He said some horrible things. This is his mugshot. Look how good he looks. You have to pay good money to have a picture taken this good. Does your driver's license look as good as this? That's his mugshot. Look at John Roberts up there. That's his mugshot. And I think it's Tom DeLay, right? The congressman? Those are their mugshots. Their politicians are so trained to have that devastating smile. It just comes naturally, even when they're getting booked for something. Okay? It's not always true because unfortunately for many of us, our driver's license photograph, our wedding photograph, we all look like we have gas, all right? Because we have this. In a competitive job market, you've got to do everything you can to sell yourself. Smile, talk, all that big smile, it plays a big part. Assertiveness is another social skill. In almost Asian American cultures, we're taught to be deferential. We defer to others, let others, right? In the American workplace, we see that as a weakness. If you're going to work for my company, whether it's a company overseas or running a 7-Eleven downtown, I want to make sure you're protecting the interests of my business. And I don't need people who are wishy-washy. We've got to teach our students to be assertive, to speak up, to not let others push them around. And when they feel uncomfortable or feel an injustice has been done, they speak up. When they get a dinner at a restaurant and it's bad, send it back. Just don't eat it. Okay? So assertiveness is a critical skill. Handshaking. Okay? We judge people by our handshakes. You've all done this. Those of you who have ever hired anyone, trying to decide if I'm going to hire someone, you've got the resume, you've listened to them talk, but bottom line is you shake their hand and think, do I want to hire this guy? Okay. Oh, he's got a good handshake. Hire this guy, okay? If he wants a job, he's got a good handshake, all right? When people have that little wishy-washy, kind of limp, okay, it just doesn't feel very good, right? Like you want to just go, ugh. Okay? So teach students how to shake hands. When you meet each other, shake hands, all right? Because it's a sign of making a connection. A good, firm handshake demonstrates you're somebody. Okay? Some people never learn. When you shake hands, it's web to web, okay? If someone just grabs you by the fingers, you let go, you re-grip, you grab firm. When someone shakes your hand, you should feel it. You should go, oh. And then how many times do you pump the hand? 3 times, okay? So do it right now. Pretend you're going in for a job interview. Turn to each other, give them your best devastating Hollywood smile, and give them a good firm handshake. Okay, thank you. Stop touching each other, please. Next area. Next social skill is making eye contact. Hey folks, did I lose you all? Okay. You all need to get out more, okay? Eye contact. It's a common saying, oh, those Latinos, those Asian Americans, how quaint it is that they look down when they're facing someone of authority. They look down to show respect. And that's true. Yeah? We're taught to look deferential by looking down, which is great at home, great at church, but in the world of work, right, we like this. In the world of work, if you don't look someone straight in the eye, okay, people get suspicious. Right? The eyes are the mirrors to the soul. We have to teach our students, I respect your culture, I respect where you're from, but part of my job is teaching you and preparing you for the world of work. And in the world of work, you're great at chemistry, you're great at math, but if you ever hope to do something, bottom line is they care about your math skills and your chemistry skills, but they want to know what you are like socially. So you have to learn how to develop good social skills, and one of them is eye contact. We do this as parents, right? As parents, well, your child isn't old enough yet, right? He's at this big, okay. But at some point in time, you're going to be saying to your child, do you have homework? You can look them in the eye to see if they're telling the truth. And we do this all the time. Those of you who've ever hired anyone, ever tried to decide if you want to buy a car from someone, you end up looking them in the eye. Because we look in the eye and test for honesty. You ever cheated on your income taxes? Okay. Sir, you know when you go to a grocery store, there's the aisles that say 7 items or fewer? You ever gone through with more than 7 items? Yeah, he's not even ashamed to admit it. Adrian, have you ever called in sick when you really weren't sick? No. David, you went to college, right? Yes. Did you study all the time? No, Did you ever go out and have an alcoholic beverage?
No.
Oh, I believe him. Okay, well, let me Stacia? Stacia, did you study all the time? No. Did you ever go out and have an alcoholic beverage? No. What? Full of teetotalers here. No one here. Oh, you went. Finally, a regular college kid. Did you ever go out and have several alcoholic beverages?
We should do that in the dorm.
In the dorm, okay. All right. Did you ever go out and... Don't answer that, okay? Thank you for playing along, though. Okay. Eye contact is absolutely critical. And the last social skill is self-promotion. We've got to teach our students there's a time and a place to be modest, but there's also a time and a place we have to learn to sell ourselves. All right? Okay? We have to learn to sell ourselves. And too many people make the mistake of making self-deprecating comments at the inappropriate times. Okay. All right. Finally, I want to end with, in addition to the social skills, is that we have to teach 7 cultural competence skills. Now, businesses today understand cultural competence. You ask anybody in business what are they looking for, they will say, I am looking for culturally competent employees. All right? So what does that mean? There are actually 7 cultural competence skills. Demonstrating empathy, demonstrating goodwill, seeking out and learning from others, dealing with ambiguity, praising others, keeping confidences, and using and giving creative feedback. All right? When businesses say, I want culturally competent employees, they're looking for these 7 skills. All right? Skill number 1, learn to demonstrate empathy. When do you start teaching people to be empathetic? When they're this big, right? When they're this big, right? That's when you start teaching little kids like, oh, look at your friend Jason doesn't have anything for lunch. Why don't you share your lunch? Or look at Mary over there, they're playing by them. No one's playing with Mary. Why don't you go over and play with Mary? Okay? That's empathy. We start teaching that as a young child. Okay? And part of the problem is that so many folks haven't learned empathy. Okay? They haven't learned to care about each other. The most important book on this the definitive, seminal book on teaching empathy is Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. Okay? Skill number 2 is demonstrating goodwill. How do you demonstrate goodwill? How do you explain that to someone? What does that mean? I tell my students, demonstrating goodwill is when you think about others and you think about their feelings and you try to be flexible, you try to be positive, you try to be sincere. So I always say to my students, when you get that great job finally as a teacher, do not be the person who eats all the baked goods in the staff lounge, but you never bring any. Okay? Do not be the person who drinks the last cup of coffee, but doesn't make a new pot of coffee. Okay? So do not be the person who never brings any food or snacks in. Okay? It's those small things that demonstrate goodwill. Third skill is seeking out and learning more about others. We tend to be in our cliques, we tend to hang around our core group we're comfortable with. We need to break out of that and try to get to know people who are different than we are. Right? Seek out people who are different than they are. Try to get to know everybody that you meet and try to hear from other people that you may not normally associate with. Okay? Skill number 4, learning to deal with ambiguity. Not everything is in black and white. There's often a lot of gray areas. So accept the fact that sometimes there are several yes answers, sometimes there are several correct answers. There's a lot of gray areas in life. Skill number 5 is give praise that is both acceptable and sincere. When was the last time someone said something nice about you professionally? When was last time someone praised you professionally? Can you think of it? If you can't think of it, okay, that should tell you something. When was the last time you praised a colleague for something? I don't mean the generic, you guys are just awesome, you're the best. That's a throwaway line. You need to be more specific. Like, Jason, you're always on time, you're always there, I can always trust you. If I know I'm in a bind, you always got my back. That's very specific, okay? Not the generalities. So make sure that you take an effort to praise each other. Okay? But it has to be sincere and genuine. Okay? Number 6, learning to keep your mouth shut. Okay? We like people who are discreet. In this day and age, with everything being available, businesses now at all levels value people who know how to be discreet. So do you have a colleague that you know that you can share something very personal with them and they won't tell? Okay. Do you also know someone in your institution that is the school gossip? If you wanted to get some dirt out about Jason, you know exactly who to go to and be all over the school. Okay. You don't want to have that reputation. All right? What you want to have is a reputation of someone that can be discreet, that can keep confidences, that they could waterboard you for a week and you would never give them up. Okay. Skill number 7 is using creative feedback from others and giving it as well also. Right? So this situation talks about sometimes you might be working with someone who is doing something that needs to be adjusted. Maybe they're writing on the board is just illegible. Maybe their questioning technique needs some help. Maybe their handouts aren't sufficiently clear, but you're afraid to tell them because you don't want to hurt their feelings. Right? We have to develop the ability of giving feedback to others that helps them, right, without hurting them, but at the same time, seeking out creative feedback from people and thinking about it seriously and taking it to heart. You ever gone home at the end of the day and realized you had mustard on the side of your face all day long and no one said anything to you? You ever gone home at the end of the day and your shirt was misbuttoned, things were gaping out, and no one said anything to you? Okay. You ever gone home at the end of the day and your zipper was down, and no one all day long ever said, Bill, your zipper is down? Okay. We need people who can give feedback honestly. A good friend is someone that when you ask them, does this outfit make me look fat? A good friend is someone that says, more salads, okay? Just ability to give more feedback, okay? Let me end with a story. Then, if we have time for a quick question, we can do this too. What I've tried to do over this past hour and a half is try to help you in terms of when you talk about transforming the curriculum and transforming campus culture, it's inevitably about preparing people for the future. It's inevitably about giving them the skills, the mental skills, the academic skills, the social skills to survive, and that's all of our responsibility. At the same time, it's important for us to realize that part of our job is also to encourage people to do better and to keep their spirits up. Now, and sometimes we need a support group. Now, I have been seeing a psychotherapist. I've been seeing her for 36 years now. That's my wife, okay? Some of you are looking at me saying, yeah, I can see why. Okay. The smartest thing I did 36 years ago was I married a psychotherapist. I've never told my wife this, but in my next life, I'm going to marry a plumber. But having a wife as a psychotherapist is very handy, because if I had a tough day at work, I go home and I got my built-in therapist right there. And I've learned something from my wife over the years. She's very good at psychotherapy. She has a specialty. It's called dual diagnosis. These are people who suffer or are afflicted with some kind of addiction, whether it's alcohol or drugs, but they're also afflicted with some kind of depression or mental illness. And it's a very difficult combination. I don't know what the drug problem is around Emporia, but in Hartford, you can buy anything you want, and it's cheap, and it's extremely addicting. So she has unlimited amount of work. But what she's learned about her patients is that they have a couple of things in common. Not only are they afflicted with an addiction to a substance abuse, and they're also suffering from some kind of mental illness, they're also afflicted with negative people in their lives. People that are always saying, you know, one more drink isn't going to hurt, or one more toke isn't going to hurt, or worse, I never should have had you, I like your sister better, or you know, you're not as smart as your brother or sister, or you're useless, you're worthless, you're no good. People are always putting them down and making them feel bad about themselves. And that's a problem because when you're weak already, you tend to gravitate towards listening to the negative. So tomorrow, if 10 people interact with you, and 9 tell you what a wonderful human being you are, but one person says something unkind, tomorrow night when you can't sleep, it's because what? You're listening to that one unkind person, okay? So my wife's advice to her patients is ditch those folks. You don't need them. And you're thinking about who they are right now, aren't you? Do you have negative people you work with? I work with some negative people. I'm picturing them right now. When I see them coming down the hall, I duck into a room. When I go into a cafeteria, I don't sit with them. I don't even want to be standing with them because I'm going in and I love my job, and I'm having a good time, and life is good, and I'm feeling really positive about humanity, and there are people who just want to wipe that smile off my face. Ignore those people. They do not help you personally or professionally, all right? Bad influences. You're picturing them right now. Don't associate with them if you can. On the other hand, focus on the people who are positive in your life, the ones that do care about you, the ones that when you're having a tough day, you go and talk to them. Okay? Those are the ones that you need to listen to, not the negative people. Now, you all know where you were on 9/11, right? We're 2 hours away from New York. And you know on 9/11, when people were in the planes, what did they do? Got out their cell phones, and who did they call? They called their loved ones, right? They're the ones that's on your speed dial right now. Those are your loved ones. My wife's advice to you, which I'm passing on, is focus on the people on your speed dial. Okay? Listen to them, make sure you stay in touch with them, okay, and listen to them. Because those are the ones that have most meaning to you. Okay? Nobody I know who's got 10 minutes left to live, right, is going to call that grumpy guy at work, right? You got to call the positive people. Right? Nobody I know who's got 10 minutes to live is going to get on the phone and say, hey, Jason, I'm in a plane. It's going down. I got 10 minutes left to live. And before I go, I just want to call and hear you bitch and moan one more time. So let me end with that. This education is an amazing career. This is an amazing group of individuals here. You have power you don't even realize in influencing people. Focus on the positive, focus on preparing students for the world of work because they will remember you, all right? 40 years from now when you're in the home, yeah, then they come visiting you, okay, you'll be happy because they'll tell you what a great job that you did educating them. So, thank you all for being here. Thank you for inviting me. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Well, to end this very pleasant day, we're going to start talking about difficult conversations. Okay, so this will get you going. One of the issues that I often find with people in this whole realm of diversity, multicultural education, cultural competence is how to carry on a conversation, how to start talking about this. And part of the problem is that a lot of us shy away from talking about these conversations because we don't know how to handle them. So just think about the last time you heard someone make a racist comment, or homophobic comment, or anti-Semitic comment in your presence. What did you do? Did you say anything? Do you hear people say those kinds of things? And how do you start that conversation? So that's what I want to do in the time that we have, is talking about how to have those kinds of conversations. But I want to talk to you in the context of learning a specific skill, and that is constructivist listening. So let me begin by sharing some research with you, actually some very depressing research. Researchers at the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research reported that college students now are 40% less empathetic than they were in 1979. This is the study that came out in 2010. College students, your students, our students, are 40% less empathetic than they were in 1979, with the steepest drop coming in the last 10 years. We talked about empathy this morning, about learning how to care about each other. Students today are generally less likely to describe themselves as soft-hearted or have tender, concerned feelings for others, are more likely to admit that other people's misfortunes usually don't bother them. Okay? Now, if you just Google empathy deficit, Boston Globe, October 17, 2010, you'll get the whole report. But that's a depressing statistic, that we're raising a generation of kids who don't care about others. So it's important for us to teach kids empathy and also to start teaching people to listen. Far too much talking today, not enough people listening. Far too many talking heads, people screaming into television monitors, and not enough people actually listening. Must be in a different time zone still. Hang on here. Oh, it's a little delay. Okay. I love this quote by Margaret Wheatley. If you know her work, she just does some beautiful, beautiful writing. But I love this quote from her. I believe we can change the world if we start listening to one another again. Simple, honest human conversation, not mediation, negotiation, problem solving, debate, or public meetings. Simple, truthful conversations where we each feel heard and we each listen well. This is how great changes begin, when people begin talking to each other and their experiences, hopes, and fears. You've all heard people arguing, right? Couples arguing. And what happens when you see or observe couples arguing? They're talking at each other, but they're not listening. They can't hear because they're too busy yelling. Right? You ask any cop who's ever had to break up a domestic dispute, the first thing they do is just separate the couple because there's no progress being made because people are far too busy yelling at each other. Stephen Covey has another great quote. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. Think of all the times you've been facing someone, talking to them, and you know they're not listening to you, right? You can tell, and you know that they're already formulating their argument in their head. So you're thinking, why am I talking? Why am I spinning my wheels? Or you're not even listening to what I'm saying. 80% of our awake time is spent communicating. We spend 45% of our awake time listening. 75% of the words are ignored, misunderstood, or forgotten. Not good news for educators, right? Most adults listen actively for only 17 seconds. Okay. So let's talk about listening techniques. I think we're all familiar with the concept of active listening. You listen to a person, you're trying to help understand, so you paraphrase what they say. Okay. So listening, paraphrasing what they say until they say, yes, that's what I mean, all right? We've all done the act of listening process, right? I want to introduce a different concept that you may not be as familiar with, and that's the concept of constructivist listening. In constructivist listening, instead of paraphrasing, what we're doing is keeping our mouth closed and listening. We're emptying our brain. We're not thinking about what we're going to say. We're not interrupting with comments or suggestions, all right? We're simply focusing our entire attention on what the person is saying. Okay? So in constructivist listening, I agree to listen and think about what you say in exchange for you doing the same for me. So what we're doing in that situation is that you're saying to a person, look, we obviously disagree on this, so I want to hear what you think, and I'm going to give you X number of minutes, and I'm going to think and focus exactly on what you're saying. I'm not going to interrupt. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to start thinking about what I'm going to repeat or reply. I'm going to listen to you intently. But in exchange, you have to do the same for me. Okay? Now, that's difficult for a lot of people, right? Because her human nature is to want to interrupt and interject and give stories and so on. So in a constructivist listening paradigm, each person has equal time to talk. We do not interrupt. We don't give advice. We don't break in with a personal story. Oh, yeah, that happened to me, okay? And we agree that confidentiality is maintained. Whatever we say, it's between us, okay? And we focus on what the person is saying. Think about the last time you were speaking to someone and you really felt that they were listening. Okay? Or are you in that kind of situation where you work with people who don't listen? They don't seem to get the message of what you're trying to say. Okay? So this is a technique that I'd like to go through with you right now, but I want to do it in a context of difficult conversation. So I'm going to present you with different scenarios, and I'm going to have you pair up. I'm going to have you practice constructivist listening. Okay? So in a few minutes, I'm going to have you do the same thing we did this morning. You're going to look around the room. You're going to find someone strange and, well, maybe not strange and new, but you're going to find somebody new. If you find someone strange, that's a bonus, okay? You're going to find somebody new, and you're going to pair up, and I'm going to have you each respond to a scenario, okay? So here's the first scenario. And these are all true scenarios. I have a series of these are all true vignettes. And I picked these because these are actual situations that happen in real life, actual aspects of racism, bias, and so on. You know, so many people think of racist acts as saying a bad word or drawing a bad picture, but racist acts are committed every day. Microaggressions are committed every day. It's important for us to understand what they are, all right? So I've given you, I have about 5 or 6 of the most common types of racial incidents that you might face in a college campus. So here's a true scenario. During a radio interview with the author of a book on Buddhist meditation practice, the talk show host asked whether the author had attempted to reach out to people of color. The author responded by saying, yes, I am offering the meditation workshops in both prisons and juvenile halls. Got it? Okay, so let's do this. I want you to look around the room. Go pick somebody you don't know. I want you to pair up, and then I'll tell you when to start, all right? So everybody up, go find somebody new, make a new friend. Thank you. Everybody got a new friend? Please shake hands with your new friend. Give them that devastating Hollywood smile, the great handshake. All right. Decide who's going to talk first. All right, decide who's talking first between the two of you. Okay, so here's what I would like you to do. The person is talking. You have 60 seconds. I'm going to time you. You have 60 seconds to answer the question. Do you see any problem with the author's response? Okay? Not to me, to your partner. And partners, remember, you're going to practice your constructivist listening. So you're going to focus on what the person is saying. Don't reply, don't comment, don't think about what you're going to say, all right? Empty your brain and focus on the person's words, the words coming out of their mouth. Are you ready? You have 60 seconds. Go. Thank you. Now it's your partner's turn. Partners, you have 60 seconds to answer the same question. Do you see any problem with the author's response? Go ahead. Thank you. All right, stay where you are, and let's get some feedback. Let's first talk about the process. You've just practiced constructivist listening, where you've emptied your brain and focused totally on what the person is saying. So let's talk about the process. How was that process for you? Yes, sir? How many people found it hard not to interrupt, right? Human nature. Good. Okay, another comment. How was it for you? Yes, sir?
Part of the problem is that in most cases, we both have the same answer. It would be a challenging question where we can have actually disagreement.
Okay, all right, good. Anyone else? Yes?
I think it successfully pointed out an area in which we have to impose self-discipline.
Impose self-discipline. I love that, all right? How many people struggle to go, oop, or how many people accidentally said something and go, I wasn't supposed to talk, right? Okay? We're so ingrained to do that. Okay? So constructivist listening. Constructivist listening means we're not actively listening, trying to help the person steer them towards a particular way of thinking. We're allowing them time to construct their own thinking and ideas. So it doesn't matter if there's empty air. Sometimes you just need to let a person sit there and think, let me think about this, and then respond. Part of our problem with our society is that we don't like dead air. And when we have dead air, we feel we have to jump in and say something. Silence is very important. Not talking is very, very important. All right? All right, so what do you think about the scenario? Who would like to answer the question? Do you see any problem with the author's response? Sir, again? Okay, good. Yes. Use your outdoor voice. Okay. Okay, do we have someone with a different reaction? Anyone with a different reaction, different response? He's asked, you've just written a book on Buddhist meditation. Are you going to reach out to people of color? The first words out of his mouth was, yeah, I'm going to go to prison. Yes. And in the actual radio interview, he got a lot of criticism because without having an hour to craft his response and make it politically correct, the first words out of his mouth are the most honest ones. Yeah, I'm going to go to prison. That's where I find all the people of color. Right? So what does that say about the author's orientation to people of color and his beliefs and the kind of people that they are? Okay. All right, let's find a new partner because we're going to do a different scenario here. So go find somebody new and strange. Thank you. Decide who's going to talk first. I'm going to give you a different scenario. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. A new scenario. Everybody knows who's going to talk first? Okay. Two white women are sitting across from one another in a lunchroom cafeteria, talking in subdued tones. Terry is telling Lauren how she feels about Sandra, a new black employee in the retail store where they both work. I really like Sandra. I don't really think of her as black. She seems almost white. So please respond. You have 60 seconds to the question. What do you think about Terry? What do you think Terry means when she says that Sandra seems almost white? How do you think Sandra might feel if she overheard Terry saying that? You have 60 seconds. Go. Thank you. Now it's your partner's turn. You have 60 seconds. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Let's talk about the process one more time of constructivist listening. Emptying your brain. Maybe that's not a good way to say that, right? But focusing on what a person is saying entirely without interrupting. So who would like to talk about the process? How was it the second time you did this? A little easier. Oh, good. Oh, good. I like to hear that. Good. Yes.
It was not easy for me to because I speak with my hands and move my head and smile a lot. And so I think that it's difficult when you're listening to someone to nod your head yes or no, but if you're agree with it, that is, oh my gosh, that's the word. Oh, in general, yes. And so you're distracting the other person. You may not be speaking, but your body language is very very specific. And I'm not saying you were, but I think I was.
Were you disturbing, sir? I don't know. Yes, Dr. Yang. Yeah, yeah. Good, good, exactly, all right? It's human nature for us to want to comment and embellish, right? Yes, sir. Sure. Right. And the issue here isn't that you're not going to practice constructivist listening for an hour. You're not going to sit there, all right? Like you may do it for a minute or so and then switch back to active listening. The thing is that there are times when you need to listen. Then there are times when you need to actively listen. Right? The problem with you need to be careful about your body language. The problem with that is that a person is often floating ideas, and you want them to maybe go one way, then go the other way, and eventually come to their own path. We want to be very careful about steering them down a path that they may not actually agree with, or they may be actually looking for us and saying, tell me what I should think. So no, you need to figure it out for yourself. For example, someone says to you, all men are pigs. And you go, right away, you've confirmed in them one line of thinking, and then they're going to go down that path, all right? So we need to be careful about those kinds of situations. All right, why don't you all take a seat, okay? Because just in the sake of time, so let's talk about this. Terry is saying, I really like Sandra. I don't really think of her as black. She seems almost white. Responses to that comment. Who would like to respond? Question is, someone is saying to two white women sitting together, one of them saying something about a new black employee, and her comment is, I really like her. She seems almost white.
Very ethnocentric.
Okay. Very ethnocentric. All right. Could you put that in English, please? What does that mean? Anyone else? Yes.
Can we agree to talk like two volume levels above what we think is appropriate?
Thank you.
I'm not hearing anything, so talk as loud as you think you should, and then go 2 octaves above.
Thank you. So outdoor voice, all right? Go ahead. Yes, please.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. Well, Terry's making the assumption that Sandra is a person who looks different from that
Thank you. Good. Another comment? Anyone? Yes, sir.
One of the things that we talk about is, and I have to make sure I get the names right. So Sandra is basically saying she's not choosing to see Terry as she is. She's choosing to see Terry as she's more comfortable seeing her.
Sandra is, yeah.
Privileges. I'm choosing your identity based on my comfort, not based on who you are.
So isn't that a compliment when you say to a black woman, I like you, you're almost white? Yes?
It implies in a very direct way the notion of deficit cultural paradigm, meaning blackness as deficit,
Sure.
whiteness as having power or being what is considered the norm or desired. And I can accept her and like her because she has this and it becomes, it
Right.
makes it easier.
Right, okay. Good, thank you.
Well, I like my partner's response because he talked about, well, is it offensive? Well, it depends on how Sandra, what her perspective or values of her own ethnicity. For her, this may be a compliment, or she may be offended by, oh, not Sandra, sorry, by, yeah, Sandra, by Terry's comments or perception of her being accepted as being white-ish.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I also think that his statement implies that there's something wrong with being collective. And I think that's kind of that somehow being a white woman is the ultimate good that we all want. But being a black woman somehow is, oh, well, if you're not that black, then it's okay.
Yeah, you're not like the other people, all right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, Ricky.
It seems to me, though, because I'm reading the statement, there's the assumption that Terry is white, which makes the comment. But then minority demographics, she makes, I mean, no, she said that she seems almost white. There's black that say that blacks are not black enough to talk white. So who's to say that Terry's not black herself? Just because the statement. But I'm saying, if that, I mean, but this conversation is very much changing where if she's black, and if she's black on black,
Okay.
or Latino, whoever else, within your own demographic, to say, well, I realize that she's not as black, or she don't sound good, or whatever. So, I mean, you can take that into two different
Sure.
with the same trait there.
Right. And thank you for that. And I want you to look at Sandra. Sandra's the new employee. She's starting at this place. I picture it like Nordstrom, some hoity-toity expensive store. She's a black woman. She's starting at work in a store that's predominantly white, middle class. How do you think Sandra dressed for that day? What do you think went through her mind about what clothes I should wear or what clothes I probably should not wear? Or how should I do my hair versus maybe I shouldn't do my hair this way? Because you think about that. Yes, go ahead.
I want to say, as an African-American woman, this happens all the time.
Really? Well, you seem almost white to me, so.
But I think there's a thing, too, in the community where we know what code switching is. Okay, let's call it a spade. We know what we have to do when we walk in a room, how we have to work that room, how we have to fit the mode that is going forth. And so it's very important for us to understand that we have been taught how to handle situations that are predominantly white, predominantly Hispanic, whatever. And even in the black community, if we weren't raised in poverty, we know how to switch it up so we can relate to those students that are from poverty, the middle class student or the high class student. So these are things that we deal with every single day in recruitment and retention of our students because we want them to trust us. Same thing happens when you go in a department store. Example, when I go to a department store, I dress up. I don't wear jeans. I wear nice clothes because I'm going to spend some money there, and I don't want to be followed around the store. If I wear jeans and a sweatshirt, they're going to follow me and wonder what I'm going to steal. So those things are very real in the African American community.
Yeah. And that leads into that whole discussion about white privilege. Some people can get up, get dressed, look in the mirror, and leave for the day without even a thought about how they're going to dress or how they appear. some others have to think and dress strategically, and when they walk into a department store, have to act strategically in order to get along. I often wear suits and ties when I go, because if I walk in wearing street clothes, people think I'm there delivering Chinese food. Okay? So it also affects the Asian community also. Okay? Yes?
It's also a gender thing. As a sex thing too. Anytime I'm working with, sorry to busy me on my STEM colleagues in here, but if I'm working with faculty in the science departments or mathematics departments, I do a lot of grant work with them. Anytime I know I'm having a meeting with them, I dress in very monochromatic clothing. I wear my hair in a bun. I take out my hoop earrings. I dial it down, and I don't. I'm different. I'm different, and it's a lot of that. It's a code switching that you have to do in order to be respected, trusted, considered, valued for your brain.
And these are things our students need to be learning. Because in addition to their core subject, their majors, they need to know the real life things that are going to help them get a job or not get a job. That needs to be a part of how we infuse into our curriculum, something that actually transforms it so it prepares students for life. Yes, sir.
I know what she said. I also want to add kind of an outplay. A lot of things happen about the age because I don't know if you can hear me. And I actually kind of say how sweet it is. But it's also about how old you are. Because a lot of times, especially when you're looking for a job, it's hard to look at those that are younger because those that are older will not take you just as seriously. Like, those that are looking, you will be like, yeah, well, you know, you really doesn't know. So, like, I haven't faced that here, but, you know, there are many around my age where we do have to face that every single day. And so it's kind of, you know, another challenge, especially for our students that are either working or living a team. They are looked at based on their age and, like, automatically assume they, okay, they're young, they don't. So that's another factor to have, and not just, you know, whether you're male or female, but also, you know, how old you might be.
Okay, good, good. Thank you, thank you. Well said. I'm going to stop there. There are several other typical kinds of scenarios, but this is one I had not planned. This issue about age was not one of them. We need to hear each other's stories because we all have them. Regardless of your race or your skin color, we all have those stories. We need to be able to share them and listen to people to find out what life is like for them. Okay? In discussions about these difficult conversations, and they can be very difficult, they can be very emotional, you know, they can dredge up all kinds of things you don't want to think about, and sometimes you reveal and talk about things you normally don't talk about. The thing that horrifies me is the thought of African American parents having to tell their young male children, don't run in public. Don't run in public with a parcel underneath your arm. If you get stopped by the police, if they happen to be rude to you, it's yes, sir, no, sir, keep your hands on the steering wheel. It horrifies me that there are people in this country that have to teach their kids skills to avoid getting shot. Right? Those are the lives and stories we need to hear. Bottom line, though, is that what's important for us is that we have to build in our students a healthy ego, a healthy respect for themselves, and a healthy understanding of that other people don't define you, you define yourself. Okay? It's important to always remember your self-worth. You can all see this? Okay, what is this? Jason, my buddy up front? $20 bill. Is this worthwhile? $20. Is this worthwhile? You know, if I happen to throw this at you, would you take it? Okay, so it's worthwhile, right? Does it still have value? Does it still have value? Does it still have value? My point is, no matter how people beat you, mistreat you, talk trash to you, call you this, call you that, keep in mind, you're who you are. You know, be true to yourself. Never let anyone determine for you or say you are less than you are. Because every single one of us in this room has worth. Every single one of us This room has value. We have great contributions to make. We are placed on this earth for a purpose, all right? And no one can take that away from us. Do not let others define you. Okay? Thank you very much for being here.